Hello, everybody. This is Bradley. Just wanted to give you guys a quick heads up. We talk a lot of college football on this episode, and unfortunately, college football did what it oftentimes does, and a lot of what we said has just been invalidated. So we hope you enjoy the conversation regardless, but a lot of it is just wrong after the upsets today. To take you a little bit behind the scenes, we record this show on Saturday mornings, and unfortunately, sometimes that leads to stuff like this happening. So we hope you enjoy regardless. It's an interesting discussion. And now, back to the show.
Hello, everybody. You know what time it is?
Time for the Rollout Show.
Heck yeah, let's do it. In honor of David Fizdale, the best coach in the National Basketball Association.
Why would you lie, though?
I'm not lying.
Greg Popovich is the best coach.
I'm not
in the
lying.
NBA.
I won't run through a wall for Greg Popovich. I'll run through a wall for David Fizdale.
I don't think you're running through any wall unless it's like one plain sheet of drywall.
Hey, we didn't have any... I didn't say I'm running through a brick wall. I just said a wall. I mean, it could be one of those cheap accordion walls that divides two rooms that could also be opened up for one big room. I mean, I didn't say I was running through, stone or anything. So I'd run through that.
People use stone for walls. Are we back
Old
in
houses.
medieval times?
Old houses, Hey, man, I watch a lot of HGTV, okay? Stonehouse Revival's coming back.
Oh, you watch too much HGTV while you drink your coffee. Your
Hey,
cold brew.
While I drink my cold brew sitting out on the porch, little HGTV, and then I start buying things at estate sales and think I'm going to, renovate my house.
Such a hipster. What is wrong
I am,
with
man.
you?
I bought some really cool mid-century modern stuff today.
You're so stupid. We got stuff to talk about. I don't want to hear
Join
about
us
your
for the
modern.
home renovation edition podcast that we're going to start soon on the rolloutsports.com.
I will not be a part of that podcast, but if you want to start it up, help yourself.
Hey, I might do it. I might. We'll see what career path I go on. Anyway, welcome to episode 32. Sorry for the little tangent there, but expect quite a few more of those because that's what we do here.
Yeah, if you're new to the show, basically we pick a couple topics, and then for an hour and a half, we just go on tangents about those topics. So I hope you enjoy that.
We start talking about baseball and end up talking about rugby because, that's just what happens.
That's not true, though, because I don't know anything about rugby.
I don't either, but I didn't want people to know that.
So the NFL trade deadline.
Wow, it's actually kind of interesting. It seemed more like the baseball trade deadline.
When has the NFL trade deadline ever been good? It's usually like random fourth string corners for seventh round picks. There were 5 massive trades on the trade deadline. It was so weird.
It's really weird because it's usually guys who are about to get cut anyway end up getting traded because it's like, oh, the Jets have a need, so let's just send off this corner because, we're going to cut him anyway.
So, for those of you who aren't aware, there were a few more than this, but these are the big name trades that happened over the couple of days prior to the trade deadline. The Seahawks get Dwayne Brown for a couple of picks. They were going to trade Lane Johnson, a cornerback, but he failed his physical, so they're going to give
Jeremy Lane.
Picks. What did I say? Lane Johnson?
Lane Johnson, the right tackle for the Eagles.
Offensive tackle. My bad.
You're good, man.
You knew
I just wanted to clarify, so now everybody was like, Lane Johnson got traded.
See, this is what happens when you go off the cuff, man. You get names wrong. My bad.
You're good, man. You're good.
Dwayne Brown, if you aren't aware, has been a long-time starter for the Texans, and this season has been holding out for a new contract, except for last week he played, and he played incredibly well, and he's very good, and this is a huge get for the Seahawks. Trade number 2, Jimmy Garoppolo, the backup quarterback of Tom Brady, to the 49ers for a second rounder.
Mr. 2-game sample size.
Game and a half because he got hurt.
That's right.
But he looked real good. Okay. Jay Ajayi from the Dolphins to the Eagles for a 4th rounder. I have some strong opinions about that one.
I'm ready for that
We're going to talk about Marcel Darius.
My boy.
One of the best run-stuffing DTs in the league.
Roll Tide.
From the Bills to the Jags. As if the Jags needed help on defense.
Hey, you know what? If you're going to build a strategy like that where your defense
go
only,
all in.
You go all in,
It's not like
baby.
you're going to have to pay a quarterback soon, right? Am I right?
Am I right?
Am I
Woo! Anyway.
And then the Bills get Kelvin Benjamin from the Panthers. So, I personally, in my few years, we're not super old, of course, I generally trade deadlines, I think about baseball, I think about basketball.
Absolutely.
I do not think about football. And 5 premier talents. I mean, in that group, you have a quarterback that most scouts will tell you is going to be a long-time starter in this league. You have a Pro Bowl left tackle, arguably the most important position on the offensive line.
Especially a position in need for a team like the Seahawks.
Absolutely. You have a Pro Bowl defensive tackle, a very, very good defensive tackle. You have Jay Ajayi, who I would consider a top 5 running back in football. And then Kelvin Benjamin, who in the right system is a legit number 1 receiver.
Absolutely.
These are 5 guys that you don't see moved around like this. And it kind of makes me think, like, did the NFL, were they like, hey guys, we're losing in this transaction race to the NBA. They're losing to it in the MLB too, but
oh yeah. And even hockey, because hockey has a ton of trade deadline transactions as well.
Right. But the only sport that I feel like is accelerating in popularity is the NBA. And I wonder if the NFL was like, hey, can we maybe make it a little more exciting?
See, my thing is, and I read an article about this a couple of years ago, and a lot of the GMs from different leagues actually coordinate with each other because it's almost like a front office fraternity, even though it's different sports. And a lot of the guys are fans of different sports, because I mean,
right.
if you work in sports,
you're
into sports. Yeah. Yes. So, and you're mainly into transaction side of sports as we are. So then you talk to other people who make transactions. If you've noticed over the years, the different leagues are starting to play off of each other. Like baseball got really started with the advanced analytics side of things, and now that's moving over to basketball. And then also you'll start seeing in baseball a lot of salary dump trades, which were really done in the NBA.
And we saw the first one of those in football recently with the Brock Osweiler trade.
Right.
That was a clear salary dump.
But shout out to Paul DePodesta from, baseball.
Absolutely.
Moneyball. Shout out. And you're starting to see that all the leagues are starting to play off of each other. You're seeing these salary dump trades. You're seeing different, basically people holding on to prospects or mainly focus on athleticism and then developing other skills, things like that. And you're just, I don't know, it's starting to seem like all these leagues are coming together.
I think that's because in all sports, the skills are kind of transferable. Like, the only thing I believe that has kept the NFL from being super active for trades is the NFL, unlike other sports, is super, super unit-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So
Next man up.
So for the Seahawks, you trade for a left tackle that, by all accounts, is a great left tackle. But because of the way the NFL is, if he can't gel with those other O-linemen, he'll be bad. Yeah. Whereas in the NBA or in baseball, if you have superior talent, you will be good, regardless of what system you're placed in. In the NFL, if you're a corner who excels in man-to-man, but then you go to a zone system,
like Darrelle
Revis with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they tried to play him as a zone corner, and he was a lockdown man-to-man guy. Like, these guys will struggle if they're not in the right system with the right people around them. So I think that's sort of why this doesn't usually happen, but I'm glad it is. I love transactions.
And another theory on this that I'm thinking is you saw a lot of different front office positions change this year. And a lot of the guys are from about the same group that they worked under. And you're starting to see this in baseball as well. So they all kind of think the same way. Like the Kelvin Benjamin trade, Brandon Beane, who is now the new GM of the Bills, he's from the Panthers. He didn't get the Panthers GM job because they fired Gettleman so far late in the offseason, but he drafted Kelvin Benjamin. So he knows his talent. So he was really like, okay, if we have a chance to get Kelvin Benjamin, we take it. And then that's what happened.
So which of these 5 trades, there were some more, but these are the big ticket items.
Big ticket.
Which of these 5 do you think helps their team the most? And you can look at this long term, short term. I mean,
that is tough.
So I'll go first. I think short term, the absolute definitive winner here is the Seahawks.
Oh, absolutely.
The Seahawks have Hall of Fame talent not Hall of Fame talent, I apologize, Super Bowl talent at every unit on their team except for O-line and maybe running backs. But I think their running backs can be fine with a good O-line.
With a good O-line, absolutely.
Their O-line is trash. Ever since they traded away
Unger, right?
Mac to Unger.
Max Unger.
To the Saints. I was thinking of the guy from the Falcons for some reason. Ever since they traded away their center, Unger, to the Saints, that O-line has not been good. And they've kind of just tried to work around it. They got Jimmy Graham. They tried to add some pieces.
It's been very patchwork.
Yeah, and it's been bad. So with a good O-line, I think that team is now very clearly Super Bowl ready, assuming he gels with the O-line unit and all that. However, long term, I think the absolute winner here, if you believe in him, and if he's your guy,
I know where you're going with
the
this.
49ers.
I knew this was coming.
Well, you have a guy, quarterback is the most difficult position to, in my opinion, scout, to acquire because there's so few. And here's a guy that most scouts will tell you has the talent to be a starter in the NFL for the next decade. And in the game and a half flash, because he got hurt during Tom Brady's 4-game suspension.
That big sample size.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And look at backup quarterbacks in the Patriots system going to other systems, i.e. Matt Castle. The difference, in my opinion, is Matt Castle had an amazing surrounding cast with that team. I mean, that team in 2008 had just come off of being the best offense in the history of football with Randy Moss and all those guys. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't quite have those same weapons, and in the game and a half before he got hurt, he was incredible. And he was a second-round pick. It's not like he didn't have talent coming out of school. So, yes, you're going to have to pay him. But this is not a move you make trading a second-rounder if you don't intend to keep him. And if he pans out, you now have a quarterback for the next decade.
See, my thing is thinking about this trade is I think it's a nice trial run to see if Shanahan and John Lynch actually like working with him. Because worst case scenario, they have a ton of money to burn. You sign him potentially, or if you find out, hey, we just really don't like this guy, you can still try to go after Cousins.
If
Cousins is your guy.
Trial run, yeah, you go after Cousins. But I don't think you give up I mean, the 49ers, this second round pick is basically a first rounder. It's going to be like the 34th, 35th pick in the draft. It's basically a first rounder. You don't give that up unless you think Garoppolo's the guy.
That's the thing, because I don't remember if they picked up an extra second rounder last year with their draft day trades, because I think they may have had an extra second rounder. Okay.
But it's much later in the draft. They gave up their second rounder.
Okay, which, I mean, that's a lot more valuable. I mean, the Patriots do that all the time, trade out of the first round and pick up a couple second rounders.
Yeah, and it works for the Patriots. But the other thing is, though, if you call this a trial run and you let him start, he's not going to start this week. He'll probably maybe start next week. I've heard rumors of him not starting at all this season. I think that would be not
insane.
Smart. But even if he starts, say, week 12 to 17, there's a 5-game sample size. That team's real bad. You're not going to get an accurate representation of what It's like Matthew Stafford's rookie year. It's like Peyton Manning's rookie year, Andrew Luck's rookie year. It's like anytime you put a guy in a bad situation, it's very, very difficult for them to succeed. And yes, you expect guys like that to make everyone around them better, but when your number one receiver is now Marquise Goodwin,
Hey, that man can fly.
yes, but he's not a great receiver. He doesn't run great routes. And yes, you have Carlos Hyde, who's very good. And you have an okay O-line, except I think Stanley's hurt and their O-line's banged up. It's tough to judge a guy off 5 games with a horrible team.
See, it is tough to judge them, but I think they know what they're looking for and know what to expect. I mean, John Lynch and Shanahan went into this knowing it was going to be a rebuilding project.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, they have to know. I think they just need to see enough. I don't think it has to translate to the stat sheet necessarily, but I think they need to see how he leads a team, how he comes into the locker room, how he performs, how he prepares.
How he prepares is the big one, I think.
I think that's what they want to see if he's a good fit.
You can see if he takes this game seriously.
Absolutely.
Which it appears that Bill Belichick, the reason that they didn't trade him, because there were rumors of Jimmy Garoppolo being traded in the offseason, and the Patriots probably could have gotten a first-rounder for him if they did that. The reason Bill Belichick didn't, now, you have to take this with a grain of salt because it came from Bill Belichick. And anytime that guy trades someone away, you're kind of like,
what?
What don't we know
like
about
Chandler
this guy?
Jones, Jamie Collins, those guys.
Although those guys have performed outside, especially Chandler Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Jamie Collins hasn't been great. Supposedly the reason why is Bill Belichick wanted to hang on to his words. I don't have the exact quote. The best quarterback situation in the NFL for as long as possible. And he did that.
He did.
He held on to Garoppolo as an insurance policy for Tom Brady as long as he possibly could. And that's what he said. He usually doesn't comment about this kind of stuff, so I would take it at least semi-seriously. And if he's telling the truth, that tells you all you need to know about Jimmy Garoppolo. That he's legit, at least in how he prepares and how he is in practice.
They did spend a second-round pick on him, and a high second-round pick at that.
And they don't draft quarterbacks like that.
Oh, no.
Ever.
Especially, because when you think about it, this was 3 years ago when they drafted him, and Brady was still rolling. So,
yeah. And still hasn't shown signs of slowing down, which is real weird. Which
is real.
I think that's the other reason they got rid of him was Tom Brady. Every season you expect for him to slow down, and you may not be wrong, but I don't want to speculate about that kind of stuff.
Reckless speculation.
Although
here.
When you see something in sports that's never happened before, you kind of gotta...
You kind of have to dig a little deeper.
A little bit, but we could consider him a generational talent as far as his body durability. That could be true.
Because he never lands on his throwing shoulder, so...
I don't want to talk about that. Bill Belichick seemed to really, really like the kid, and that should tell you all you need to know. So, and he studied under Tom Brady, who Tom Brady also seemed to genuinely like him. He seemed, it's sort of like when Wes Welker was traded.
Right.
He was kind of upset, but knows it's for the good of the team. But he's sad to see a friend go. So, I think long term, that will, in my opinion, turn out to be the biggest one.
See,
your turn now. Sorry,
no, it's fine. This is very tough for me because I'm still a little iffy on the Garoppolo trade. It could potentially, if he's what everybody says he is, then absolutely Garoppolo trade. For some reason, I'm saying Marcel Darius.
Okay.
It's between him and Kelvin Benjamin for me because the Bills needed a receiver, but
badly.
They
need a number one.
After they traded everyone, and Kelvin Benjamin is a very unique number one receiver. I think he'll definitely play well in Buffalo, especially for some of those like ground and pound games you have to have up there in the snow. You need a physical wide receiver.
You can just throw one up and he can just go get it.
Absolutely. The DeAndre Hopkins kind of mold where he's just going to out physicality you.
Can I bring up an interesting point about this Bills trade?
Yes.
I think this may help the Panthers more than it helps the Bills.
Really?
So the Panthers right now we're rolling Devin Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin, who are basically the same
They
receiver.
are the same guy.
They're exactly the same, which leads... They're great. They're both really, really talented, but they're a little slower, like 4.6 speed instead of 4.4 speed, and they'll catch jump balls.
It's like rolling out 3 tight ends.
But it leads to this system where you want a clear space for Christian McCaffrey, but you can't because your receivers can't get out fast enough. You want to push the ball downfield, but it's tough because your O-line isn't amazing and your guys can't get open downfield because they're so slow. It works out great in the red zone, but having 2 of those guys is, I think, hurting them. And their GM came out and said as much. They said that they love Kelvin Benjamin, but they felt like they needed to get more speed at the position. And I actually think this is a great move for them.
And I actually see the quote right here, and they weren't planning on extending him either, so you might as well get rid of him right now.
Yeah. I do think this helps the Bills. They needed a number 1 receiver, and I think he'll be great for them. But as someone who's not really a Bills believer anyway... as you can see from the Thursday night game where they just got destroyed by the Jets, although Thursday night games are weird.
Thursday night games are always
They've
weird.
won a lot of close games, and that division, New England's still going to come out on top. The AFC's really tough this year.
Hey, you need to watch out for the Dolphins.
No, you don't. You do not need to watch out for the Dolphins. The Bills will finish second in that division. I can guarantee you that. But I don't think in the AFC 9-7 is going to get you a wild card spot this year, and I think that's what they're going to go. So,
which is leaps and bounds above what anybody thought they were going to be. Because in my NFL Pick'em group, the beginning of the season, I had the strategy of who's ever playing the Bills or Niners.
Or Jets, even.
Or Jets,
the
yeah.
Jets have 4 wins.
And the only one I'm right on is the Niners.
So your Marcel Darius, I actually like that pick a little bit more because while the Jags defense has been incredible, they are giving up over 5 yards a carry on the ground.
Oh, they are. I mean,
so they have a clear weakness on their defense, and they're addressing it directly.
Directly with about the best guy you can get. And I think they really got him. I mean, because mainly they just took on his contract, and his contract is pretty big.
Massive. He just got it 2 years ago.
He just got 2 years ago, but Doug Marrone was in Buffalo when he was drafted. He definitely believes in him. And the reason, I mean, Darius was even available is some of the off-the-field stuff, and it looks like Marrone is very confident that they can, get him back into shape and, keep him on the straight and narrow. He got
lazy in Buffalo. He did.
Exactly. I mean, and honestly, it's hard to not get lazy in Buffalo when you lose all the time. No offense to Bills fans, but you guys have not had the greatest stretch of football success.
It's been horrific.
It has. So, I mean, and plus, he's a Southern guy. You're up there in the snow all the time. I mean, it's hard for you to continually be motivated to play when it's like, well, we're going to come out here and we might win 4 or 5 games. We may get to 500, but we're not winning anything. I mean, it's tough to stay motivated like that.
I like the move. The reason I didn't go there is because I think there's a very obvious move that they could have made that would have been better.
Getting QB?
Getting Kirk Cousins.
Yep. I just don't think Kirk Cousins was available. For some reason, Washington is continually basically keeping him under wraps. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you either extend him or you let him walk.
It's crazy.
You trade him, extend him, or whatever, but don't keep this transition tag, franchise tag thing going on. It's like, what are you doing?
The other 2 guys that I immediately thought of were Eli or Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
I don't think the Phillip Rivers one would have worked because that team has actually started to win games. I think they're under 500, but they're
in every game.
Yeah. And I think they wouldn't sell off their chance at the playoffs because they think they still have a shot.
And they're trying to get to that 15,000 fan threshold over in Los Angeles.
Ouch. And I don't think Eli is that good, so I wouldn't have made that trade. I really would have liked the Kirk Cousins trade, though.
I think that would have been amazing. And honestly, since it looks like the Niners are out now, if he actually gets to semi-free agency with the transition tag, I think he's able to negotiate with other teams.
I could see him going to the Jags.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, if you have a defense that good, Kirk
and
is
a pretty good receiving core. It's
especially
not
with
horrible.
Allen Robinson potentially coming back.
You have
I mean,
a great
he's
running
good.
game, a decent O-line. That team is a quarterback away. Like we've been saying this for a while now. Like every season, the Jags are a quarterback away. But this season,
they're actually a quarterback away.
They really are
because Fournette is a monster.
It's the exact same thing as the Texans were. We're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about the Texans later. But it's just a quarterback away, and I would like to think Kirk Cousins is a pretty smart man. I think he can see that if I come to Jacksonville, I have arguably the best defense in football on my side that's still pretty youthful overall.
I have Leonard Fournette to hand the ball to. I have a pretty good, really young receiving core in Allen Robinson when he comes back. Allen Hurns is a solid number 3, and Marquise Lee is a solid number 2.
Absolutely.
You have 3, and they're all super young. They're all like
super
24.
Young, and they've been playing together for a long time.
So, and if you get Kirk Cousins, other free agents, I could easily see
Vernon Davis
like
comes
a Vernon
in here.
Davis.
Yeah, just a nice veteran presence, to just get you a couple of red zone targets.
Absolutely, I could see that easily.
And there's also the benefit of no state income taxes in the state of Florida. That is also a factor for a lot of guys.
It helps. It helps with Texas and Florida getting those free agents because it's an extra 10% that those guys won't have to pay to the government.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, hey, guys want to get paid and they want to keep their pay.
So, in summary, I think the Seahawks move was the best, and you think the Jags move was the best?
I do. I agree.
Okay. Good talk.
Good talk. Yeah, that's great.
Now, I would like to talk about one very special team. So there was another big trade that was supposed to happen on trade deadline day. There's been talks a lot of A.J. McCarron being traded by the Bengals, and they've always denied these. They don't want to trade him because they think they have a really good quarterback situation, and they like having a backup they can believe in. For trade deadline day, it was finished. The Cleveland Browns were trading a 2nd and 3rd round pick to the Bengals for A.J. McCarron. And the first thing you might say is, hey, Bradley, why would the Browns, who have better picks, what was that?
Something outside. Okay, sorry. We got really sketched out for a second. Really sketched out.
There was a ghost in here. I hope that came across on the microphone because that was great. Hey, Bradley, why would the Browns,
what's up, Bradley?
who are probably going to have better picks than the 49ers, though maybe not because they're both winless, trade a 2nd and a 3rd for A.J. McCarron, who's looked good.
He has looked good.
By all accounts, the better prospect is Jimmy Garoppolo. And the 49ers only had to trade a 2nd rounder for him. Do you not agree with that statement?
That is curious.
Oh, okay.
I think I may have an opinion on that, but I want to see where you're going with this. Go ahead.
First of all, do you disagree with me that Jimmy Garoppolo is a better prospect than A.J. McCarron?
Well, it also depends. We don't really know what 2nd and 3rd rounder they gave up because the Browns have a crap ton of 2nd and 3rd rounders. Right, so for all I know, it's like really late in the 2nd and late in the 3rd.
That's a fair point. Okay, so we'll circle back to that. So the deal was done. The Browns actually brought up that same issue of why are we giving up all this when they got Garoppolo for a 2nd, and the Bengals stood firm. They really like A.J. McCarron. They didn't want to let him go. That was their price. So they argued about it, and eventually Sashi Brown at 3:55 calls back and say, we'll do it. Let's get this deal done.
Let's get it done.
We have 5 minutes. So the Bengals quickly get their paperwork together, get it into the NFL, all that. The Browns quickly get their paperwork together, send it to the Bengals. But they don't add the NFL office to the email, okay? If you've used email before, You know, if you work in like a typical office situation, you'll send an email out. A lot of time you'll CC your manager or CC your director or something on the email just so you know they have a record that it got sent. The Browns forgot to do that. Supposedly, they thought, and I don't know if they've came out and said who did it. It was either Sashi Brown or a Sashi Brown assistant. Thought that only one team had to send the paperwork to the league for it to be legitimate. Because, I mean, theoretically that would make sense. If one team is saying that the deal is done, then they would allow the trade to happen. Because basically how the deadline works is the trade, all the paperwork doesn't have to be in by the deadline. The NFL just has to know that it's official.
That's agreed to.
They have to know it's official by the deadline, that both teams agree it's going to get done. You're good to go.
That's why you have the trades announced like after the deadline's passed, because it's like, oh, this was agreed to at 3:59.
Right. The Browns didn't do that. So, A.J. McCarron is a Bengal who had been notified by his agent earlier that day that he was going to the Browns.
He probably told Catherine Webb, hey, let's pack up. We're going to Cleveland.
Ooh, goody.
All right. Lake Erie.
So, I would like to comment on the situation.
Go for it.
You and I both thought that the whole Sashi Brown, Paul DePodesta, and Hugh Jackson thing was really going to work out in Cleveland.
We did.
We thought it was going to be a long, gruesome road, and it's only been 2 seasons.
2 years, yeah.
It's going to be a long road.
But we believed in them.
This team, over time, trust the process, it was really going to get done. This is a gross mistake. It shows pure and utter incompetence from the top. And this combined with the fact that the Browns, on paper, have gotten better the last 2 years. They've added Jamie Collins. They've got supposedly a guy they believe in at quarterback now. They've got some receiver talent. Their O-line is still rock solid.
Compared left tackle, like they just grow left tackles over there.
I don't even remember his name. I was watching the Browns game on Red Zone. Who were they? They were playing. Who was he blocking? I texted you about it. Who did the Browns play last week? The Vikings. Everson Griffin.
Yeah, he's good.
Everson Griffin got 1 sack, and it was at the very end of the game. The Browns' backup left tackle. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. He played like crazy. He allowed, until the very, very end of the game, 0 pressures to Everson Griffin, one of the premier pass rushers in football. That's incredible.
Should have traded him.
And yet, the Browns don't have a win. We believed in Hugh Jackson. And if you're the Browns owner at this point, what do you even do? You've committed yourself to this long-term rebuilding project. You believe in Sashi Brown. You believe in Paul DePodesta, whose name I can't say for some reason. You believe in Hugh Jackson. You brought these guys for the long term. You believe of them. You want them to control your football team. And now they just show gross and utter incompetence.
See, if I'm Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, he hasn't really been patient with front offices or coaches since he took over the Browns. But my thing is, you've gone down this path way too far. I think you have to see it through at least another season or two. And if there's not even signs of improvement by next year, you just clean house.
But that's the problem. Like, it's sort of the same thing we do in college football, where when a new coach comes in, you give them a good 3 or 4 years to get their guys in. Hugh Jackson, he's had some time. It hasn't been a lot of time. But you expect a good football coach to get you a couple wins.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like he hasn't believed in a lot of what's been going on because you've heard some rumblings of him really fighting with Sashi Brown and DePodesta on personnel moves. And I think this was one move for Hugh Jackson that they wanted to make because I think this is Hugh Jackson's guy. He drafted McCarron.
But I also don't absolve Hugh Jackson of guilt because of how he's handling his quarterback situation.
It
Where every
hasn't been
game-
good.
Where every game at halftime he's switching quarterbacks. You can't do that. Do you believe in Deshaun Kaiser or not?
I think the answer is no.
And if you don't, then get him out and bring Kessler in, because maybe he is the answer. Like, Hogan's hurt right now, but that seemed to be what they were doing with Hogan. They were bringing Hogan in to see if he could be the guy.
I think you should really just start Charlie Whitehurst. He's still on the roster, right?
I hate you.
That man's got great hair.
Would you way to just derail this whole conversation?
That's what I do here.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. That's why I'm the host. I just derail conversations.
So Marvin Lewis came out and said he was relieved because he really didn't want to get rid of A.J. McCarron. And then there's this other little tidbit that I heard a report about, that
I think I know where you're going with this.
if this trade had happened, if A.J. McCarron had gone to the Browns, the Bengals would have an open spot at backup quarterback. And they were legitimately considering bringing on Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, I did not hear about this.
So this may have been a strategic move by the Bengals owner to get rid of this current lawsuit that Colin Kaepernick has begun of being blackballed from the NFL. Because
take one for the team.
As soon as he gets a job, the lawsuit's over.
It's over.
He can't say he's being blackballed when he has a job. That, and Colin Kaepernick may be better than Andy Dalton. It's probably up in the air. They're about the same talent level.
It's probably up in the air.
But Andy Dalton's been bad this year. He's been below his career
Usual
averages.
Self.
That is another domino piece that, because this trade didn't go through because of the Browns' incompetence, it didn't get to fall. What? I don't understand how you don't know the rules of the trade. Of all things to not know. If you're Sashi Brown...
Well, they've made trades. That's the thing.
But not at the deadline. Like, if you're DePodesta and...
DePodesta has to know.
And you're all about transactions. We're going to make these moves. It's going to be awesome. And you don't know the rules of the trade deadline?
I mean, DePodesta's done some stupid stuff in his day, which is why he got ousted as the Dodgers GM. But, I mean, he has to know that.
It's just incompetence, man. And I feel bad for Browns fans because I honestly thought this organization was going to get turned around with this leadership. I legitimately did, and it seems like it's not.
This is the kind of flub that does get you fired, though. I mean, it's similar to Hennigan having his strategy board behind the picture he took of the guy he just signed in Orlando. And then, like, with the different trade scenarios in the background, it's like Aaron Gordon for Saric. And that's the worst part of it, because Dario Saric was drafted by the Orlando Magic and traded to Philadelphia.
Man, that's horrible.
That was awful. I think ownership really saw what was happening there, the DeVos family, and they were like, really, this is the guy we have running our organization? He was this highly recommended by the Thunder?
That kind of stuff gets you canned.
That definitely gets you canned. I mean, he already built up a nice resume, a nice fireable resume, but that was just the nail in the coffin right there. But honestly, I think another wrinkle to this scenario is DePodesta doesn't actually work in Cleveland. He doesn't work in the offices. He telecommutes from San Diego because he loves living out in California, and his agreement with Haslam to take over the Browns was that he was going to get to stay in San Diego and not have to work in Cleveland.
That sounds familiar, a.k.a. Phil Jackson.
Yeah, it sounds
very... He didn't want to leave California. He wanted to live in L.A., but his team was in New York.
Yeah. So, because with the time zone changes, there's a little difference there.
If Paul DePodesta knows this rule, and he's in the probably a war room at that point for the trade deadline as they're taking calls and sending calls, maybe he notes like, hey, don't forget to CC the NFL in this email, otherwise the trade doesn't go through. It's just, I feel bad for Browns fans, man. I hope they turn this around. I really like Hugh Jackson as a coach. I think he's a good coach still.
Same here. We're both believers in Hugh Jackson.
The other Browns news, I don't know if you saw it, was Josh Gordon.
Hey, Josh Gordon.
Conditionally reinstated. He's got to get through some final stuff with the NFL. He's basically on parole right now with the NFL, not legally. He may be legally. I'm not sure. But I don't want to grossly speculate.
We'll just say NFL probation.
Yeah. December 3rd, I believe. It's like week 14 or 15.
27th is his first game he could play.
November 27th?
November 27th,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So close, but yeah.
This is what happens when you do it off the top of your head, man. When you're grossly underprepared and incompetent like the Browns.
Hey, we should rename this the Browns podcast.
We should not do that. I don't want to talk about Browns all the time.
That'd just be sad.
So it's yet another piece that Hugh Jackson will have to play with. That's huge, though, because Josh Gordon is a top 5 talent. If he still
absolutely.
Has it. He's 27 now, I believe. He hasn't played in a few years.
There's not a lot of wear and tear on that body, though.
I agree, but also he hasn't had football activity in years now. He hasn't taken
just been
hits.
trying to get his life right.
He hasn't had to go up for balls in high pressure situations. But he's really good, and that'd be a huge piece for the Browns if he can come back.
I mean, from his Instagram, even beginning of the season, it was showing him like working out. He was posting the workout videos, and Browns fans were just like, "Oh, he's coming back," and everything like that. So,
unfortunately, there's a difference between workout
absolutely.
And actually playing.
Like Simeon Rice working out, and it got the Bucs fans like, "Oh, he's coming back." It's like, no, he's not. Just being in shape and being in football shape are two different things.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. It's why a guy like Le'Veon Bell had a slow start to the season, because he wasn't in football shape.
Right. He may have been in great physical shape, but you have to take the hits.
You have to be, your body has to be used to taking those hits, because it's quite grueling. Okay.
And with the Josh Gordon thing, I don't know. Go ahead with what you're saying. I cut you off. That's my bad. My bad.
I was going to move on. So
okay.
If you have more to say, please go.
With Josh Gordon, I just hope he gets everything together, and the reports, coming out now is it's not just a marijuana issue. He was dealing with a whole lot of other
If it was just
things.
A marijuana issue, he never would have been out of the league. There's a lot of guys in the NFL who have marijuana quote unquote issues. There's a lot of guys in this country, a lot of people in this country that have quote unquote marijuana issues. The marijuana doesn't impact you in a way that would make you be kicked out of the league for 2.5 years.
And he was pretty open about it, just like about where he comes from. He's basically been taking all these different drugs and all these drugs together for years, just like different, cocaine and codeine syrup and a few other different drugs. I don't know the exact names of them, but really hard drugs. And a lot of people I didn't know it, and most of the public didn't know it. It was just everybody's like, man, dude can't lay off the weed, and he just keeps getting suspended. But I think we're starting to see why he really went to rehab, because it wasn't just marijuana. It was a whole list of things.
You don't go to rehab for marijuana. I don't know if there's ever been a case where a guy in a situation like being a professional athlete goes to rehab for marijuana.
There probably is at some point somewhere down the road. Let's just not say nobody's done it before.
But
I get what you're saying.
point.
I understand your point.
Marijuana on its own, look, I don't want to sound like I'm endorsing marijuana here, but I also agree that we should legalize it, because I think it's stupid not to.
Political alert.
How? Yeah. Hashtag political alert. Hashtag you're a lefty. I don't know. Marijuana, I suppose, in the same way that an alcohol addiction can mess you up and you need to go to rehab, but more than I don't know. I don't see a guy being kicked out of a sport for 2 years for marijuana, but I hope he gets his life together, because those drugs are not good for you.
No.
It also brings up another interesting topic of, if one of the drugs he was doing was codeine, why are we giving codeine to players to help with their pain tolerance? Because
it's also
addictive. Not good for you.
It's real not good for you.
Yeah. Those drugs are incredibly bad for you. And I hope the NFL finds a way to get more players off of them, because they're
real bad.
Really, 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 really bad for you. Worse than marijuana.
And it's pretty much readily available.
Oh,
absolutely.
Even for non-athletes.
Yeah, for non-athletes. I mean, you get a prescription for codeine fairly easily.
I have some right now.
As do I.
Yeah, I mean, it's readily available.
I mean, it was prescribed to me.
Yeah,
but
it's prescription.
Yeah,
it was my wife's, but we have some at home right now. Everyone can easily get a hold of these drugs, and We don't need to turn this into a political
A drug and political discussion.
Yeah. Woohoo!
So that's another one of our
what Donald
tangents.
Trump did? Oh! Just kidding.
That's a different podcast. You can find that elsewhere.
Can I bring up a funny story since I said the words Donald Trump?
Oh gosh,
it's not political.
Okay, all right, go for it.
So you know how Donald Trump likes to use Twitter, right?
Yes, I'm aware.
This is not political. I'm not making a political statement at all. I just found this to be a funny story. Hashtag analysis. So you also know how everyone says, "Oh, the last day of my job here, when I quit, I'm just gonna punch a customer in the face. I'm gonna push down this shelf of stuff." You know how people say that?
Yeah, I understand that.
So a guy at Twitter. Friday. Have you heard this story?
I've heard this story.
Friday was his last day at Twitter. He was moving on to greener pastures. I don't know where. I don't know who. They didn't say who. Right before he went home for the day, this may have been Thursday actually, he decided it would be real funny to deactivate Donald Trump's Twitter account. So he did. And for like 11 minutes, Donald Trump was not able to use Twitter because it was deactivated. I just thought it was funny because it's like, you always hear these stories of guys of people that are gonna do something crazy on their last day of work and then they never do it. But this guy did.
Last night at work for me, I had a guy who was like just wanting to go hit on every girl he saw. I mean, because he had 2 days left and he was just like leaned up against the wall, like not really doing a whole heck of a lot. And I was like, all right, well, I'm training somebody, so I'm gonna make sure I train him and he doesn't like pick up your bad habits right now. Because like I know you're moving on to greener pastures, but like yeah, so I get it. It's just funny because I had that situation happen like, a day or so ago.
All right, that's it for our political talk. Not political talk. That was a great story. Okay, let's move on to the World Series. Baseball.
What a World Series.
Weston.
Holy crap.
Please quickly recap the World Series for us. Go.
It was freaking amazing.
It was pretty good.
So it was a hard-fought matchup. If these teams played 50 times, it would honestly be 25 and 25. That's right. Two best teams in baseball. The Indians, we thought they were one of the best teams in baseball, which they still are, but
no, these are the two best.
These are the two best teams. And they're two very analytically focused teams, which is really kind of cool. So, but what we saw in this World Series is teams that are very analytically focused, and one team kept to their exact formula. The Dodgers, they stayed with their formula. Hey, 2 times through the order, this is it, go to the pen. They've gotten us out of here before. But what happens is, in the playoffs, a lot of things don't go according to plan, and you have to adjust. The Dodgers didn't seem to adjust. They still kept their same approach with, hey, we're going to try to hit the ball in the air. If we strike out, hey, it happens kind of thing. And you saw that in Game 7 when they got behind 5-0. They ended up getting a run, I believe, in the bottom of the 6th inning. But the swings kept getting longer and longer. Everybody was trying to hit the impossible 5-run homer to
they were trying to come back in one swing instead of come back a piece at a time.
You have to, mount a rally, and Bellinger, I mean, I've never seen a swing that long, and Corey Seager, even the most casual of baseball fans, knew he was going to get that hard curveball low and away that's going to fall out of the zone and fall off a cliff. Kept swinging over it every time. He just couldn't lay off. And every time he swung, it was like he was swinging to China or something. Like, I mean, he pretty much corkscrewed into the ground. It's just, that was the thing where, as the Astros, they changed their approach. I mean, they're trying to go the other way, which is what you have to do. You have to adjust, and you also have to adjust your pitching strategy, which is the Dodgers kind of did in Game 7, but through the rest of the series, I mean, every single time you're seeing Brandon Morrow coming out of the pen, or Kenta Maeda. It's like you can't.
Those guys pitched well, though.
They did pitch very well.
Those two in particular were pretty good.
They were, and you saw Kenley Jansen for like 3 innings or something. But the thing is, bullpenning doesn't really work because it's not a fresh look anymore. If you've seen them the past 6 days, then I mean you've seen these guys enough.
That's a good point that I had not considered. Like, usually you bring in a guy for an inning because the first time through an order, like the hitters aren't going to know what to look for with the pitcher, but they've been hitting against them for a week now.
Well, exactly. It's different in a 3-game series, but that's the whole essence of bullpenning and from the analytical approach why it's supposed to work. Because the starter, a third time through the order, a hitter's had 3 looks at him. So unless you're like Verlander or honestly how Kershaw is supposed to be and is most of the time in the regular season, I mean, people have seen him. You know what you got.
You just always take shots at Kershaw, man.
I don't mean to, but I mean, Kershaw is fine 3 times through the order. They just don't seem to pitch him 3 times through the order anymore. It's just regular season, he's a different pitcher than he is in the postseason. And some guys are like that. Madison Bumgarner is the exact opposite because he's a different pitcher in the postseason than he is in the regular season.
So disrespectful to Kershaw.
I have all the respect in the world for Kershaw.
Apparently not.
Hey, whatever. But anyway, so the third time through the order, I mean, most guys have a pretty good look at you and what you got to throw. I mean, they've seen that down and in curveball and are able to lay off of it most of the time. But anyway, the reason bullpenning works is you have like a full bullpen, and during a regular season series, you mix in different guys. So say you throw your lefty specialist, and then you bring in your setup guy or something. Usually your closer is the one guy who pitches almost every game. In the playoffs, you can't really do that because relievers, in essence, are starters who couldn't make it as starters. They didn't have the stamina. They didn't develop the extra pitch to make you a good starter.
That's harsh.
I mean, it's true because, I mean, most people in the minors, they start out as a starter, and then they convert you to a reliever if they just think you're going to be better as a reliever. So you usually only have a couple of pitches you can throw. If you've seen a guy for the past 5 days, you know what he's got. I mean, he's not really going to mix you up. That's why you have to kind of change your strategy, but the Dodgers just kept, all right, bringing in Maeda in the 6th. Okay, cool. I mean, everybody knew what his slider was. The Astros were able to see his slider, so that's what happened. Brandon Morrow, he's got a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. He's going to throw it up in the zone. The Astros were starting to be able to lay off of it. So, I mean, it's just they developed a strategy, and that's why. And plus, these guys were gassed. They're not used to pitching all these innings back to back to back. So it's just one of those things that it's like these teams had a great strategy and a great plan coming into it. And the same thing happened with the Astros. I mean, the Astros lights out closer the entire season basically got the yips in the World Series. I mean, he imploded. No offense to Ken Giles. You had an amazing season, and you're still a good pitcher. It's just you did not have it in the World Series, and they couldn't pitch him, so you had to start going to like Brad Peacock and guys like that who aren't used to being relievers, but it was able to bail Houston out.
So as a non-huge baseball fan, like I hesitate to even call myself a casual baseball fan. I used to watch a lot of baseball, but haven't the last
In a while.
Probably 5 years. I haven't watched a significant amount of baseball. I came away from the World Series pleased. It was a really good series.
Oh,
I had a lot of fun watching it, and I am probably going to watch baseball next season.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so high five right here, right across the desk.
Well, and that's the job of the World Series, really. Like, yes, you want to crown a champion. Yes, it's great for the hometown. But it's also sort of like a marketing ploy, right?
Oh, 100%.
Because where you make most of your money is the regular season, especially in baseball with the regional contracts and stuff.
I mean, it even outdrew Sunday Night Football, the ratings.
And I watched the World Series and not Sunday Night Football.
And you have no idea how proud I am of you.
Granted, it was a bad matchup that Sunday night. I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't a great matchup. But still, I
watched the World Series.
There was a night where I watched baseball instead of football, and I never thought I would have done that. I quite enjoyed it. I'll probably watch at least some baseball next season.
I'll keep you to that.
Yeah. But it was good. As a guy who hesitates to even call himself a casual baseball fan, I found myself really rooting for the Astros, even though their first baseman didn't really act professionally or in a way I would consider
good for the game,
or good as a person.
Yeah.
If you don't know what he did, he basically, after they lit up Yu Darvish, he like did the squinty eyes thing because Yu Darvish is Asian,
he's Japanese, and
it's not okay.
And shout out to Yu Darvish, he handled it very well.
He did.
Yeah.
Because if Yu Darvish wanted to, and maybe he should have, if he had blown up, What's the first baseman's name? I apologize.
Yuli Gurriel.
Gurriel. So Gurriel is suspended for the first 5 seasons of 5 games. The 5 seasons.
There's a career.
The first 5 games of next season. The reason, according to Manfred, was 1, he didn't want to punish the entire Astros for something that Gurriel did. He just wanted to punish Gurriel financially, right. And he took a lot of what Yu Darvish said into account. And Yu Darvish was very much like, I'd like to move past this. Let's move on.
He didn't really want it to be a story.
He just wanted to pitch. Like, he didn't take a lot of offense to it. He said it's fine. I'd like to just move on. And if he had blown up, Gurriel would have been suspended a game in the World Series.
Probably he would have been. And the thing is, that's why I have to give a lot of credit to Darvish. And honestly, he's like, look, like, we all make mistakes and everything. He has a family. I have a family. I just honestly want this to go away. It just happened in a quick second and a lack of judgment and everything. And honestly, and then if you saw, Game 7, Yuli Gurriel is getting showered with booze in Los Angeles. As he should have, yes. And he's, tipping his cap to Darvish the entire time. Just like a nice little tribute to him. And because I know Yuli Gurriel did something super stupid, but there was a nice bridge between Carlos Beltran, who was Darvish's teammate last season, and Gurriel, who Beltran's kind of a mentor to Gurriel, and kind of like talked it out.
It's one of those things where Gurriel is probably a good guy and didn't mean anything by it.
Yeah.
But you have to be... Here we go back on the political bandwagon. It's not political.
Oh gosh.
No, you gotta be... You have to be aware of what comes out of your mouth, or in this case, what you visually do, especially when there's a camera on you. You just have to be more aware of what you're doing, especially as a professional athlete. Like, all eyes are on you. You do something that could be taken as even mildly offensive. And because imagine if he had in some way mocked a black person. Like, he would have gotten obliterated. And it's
another thing with this is it's the difference between kind of the World Series and the regular season and different things, because the camera is like always on you after you like score a run or something.
Yeah,
you can't hide in the World Series.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And another thing is, it doesn't really excuse him from this, but it's just something to like keep in mind. This is really he hasn't even lived in the United States a full year. He's fresh out of Cuba. He got here last season, basically, so he's been living kind of in the U.S. for a year, and just things are different over there.
Apparently he also called him a name that translates really, really inappropriately, but on the Le Batard show, I don't remember what he called him, like little Chinese man or something like that in Spanish. But apparently Dan Le Batard is Cuban, and they have a lot of Hispanic people on their show, and he was saying that that's not what it means in Spanish.
No, it doesn't.
It just translates poorly.
It does.
It's not offensive in that language. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind. But you just have to be more conscientious. And
this is a big lesson for him. And I think it's going to be a non-factor for the rest of his career.
And I'm glad they were able to hash it out. But it's an important reminder to athletes that all eyes are on you. You got to be conscious about what you do and what you say.
What you do and what you say on the field and off the field. That goes for like social media too, as well.
Oh, it's basically the same thing.
I mean, you're connected everywhere right now. So everybody's got a camera on them, whether you like it or not. If you basically do a tirade at a coffee shop or something, then people are going to know about it.
Including our man Weston here.
I know.
Called him Scoop down at the Orlando coffee shop. Was it in Orlando that? Never mind.
Wait. We'll talk about that off the pod.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Anyway.
Look, we got sources, man. By sources, I mean, we don't have anything. I was just making stuff up.
Okay.
We need reporters!
I've seen people at Orlando coffee shops before.
Who have you seen in Orlando coffee shops?
Announcer for the Magic.
Hey!
One of the guys who's on one of my favorite home renovation shows, Zombie House Flipping. Shout out to Duke. He was at my Starbucks.
What dirt did you get on him?
That he's teaming up with some other realtors on a project. That's about it. They're bringing him in as a designer. Pretty
work.
good. And then just a lot of different reporters. I don't remember all their names, but
What a horrible show this is.
it's not been great.
World Series, to wrap it up. It was a great series. It made
Great
someone who
series.
doesn't really like baseball that much probably going to watch baseball next season.
Maybe the start of the Astros dynasty, if they hope so.
Altuve's great.
Altuve is
Correa's
a
great.
monster. Bregman.
Did you see the ring that Correa gave? If you didn't know Correa after the World Series, he proposed to his girlfriend, blah, blah, blah.
It was a nice
I
moment.
don't like
It's cute.
PDA stuff like that. I think it's cheesy. Like, what would you have done if you hadn't won the World
Well,
Series?
that's what he said. He's like, well, I would have had to have gone to plan B because they asked him this, like, would you still have done it if they lost? He's like, no. Like, what the heck? I would have gone to plan B, but I'm glad we won, so this all worked out.
But it's like, why would you heap this on top of an already amazing moment when you want, like, your own special moment with her?
Correa's big time, man. Correa's big time.
I understand that. Anyway, that ring was massive.
Hey.
It's a nice ring. I'll take that ring. Correa, call me. All right.
Oh my gosh. I think your wife would have something to say about that.
She doesn't have to know.
Oh
Okay. Last thing we want to talk about today. College football playoff rankings officially came out. And here's the top 10 or top 15. Okay, we have in order Georgia, Alabama,
RTR,
Notre Dame, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, TCU, Wisconsin, Miami, Oklahoma State, Washington, Virginia Tech, Auburn, and Iowa State. So what I want to do here is there's 15 teams, and that pretty much covers all of the 15 teams that are still in the running for the playoff. There may be some more, like if a bunch of those teams lose, I could see Stanford sneaking in. Stanford's currently at 21. If somehow LSU beats Bama tonight, which by the time the show goes up would have already happened, I could see LSU sneaking in. Because then they would go to the SEC championship game, and then if they beat Georgia, then they're gonna get in. Like,
yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
You would have to.
But I'd like to go through the top 15. Which ones do we think still have a legitimate shot at the playoff, and who doesn't?
Okay.
We like to call this segment Contenders and Pretenders.
All right. If only we had a soundboard to do some sound effects here.
Yeah, that's stage 3 of our next production increase. Okay.
Anyway.
Number 1. We'll do this in order.
Okay.
Georgia.
Georgia's ranked?
I hate you. Just say contender so we can move on.
Contender.
Thank you. Bama.
Contender.
Notre Dame.
Pretender.
Okay. So here's our first one that we could stop on and talk about. Notre Dame actually has a pretty tough schedule this year. They play Georgia, Stanford, Miami, and USC. All 4 very good teams. So far, of those 4, they've played Georgia and USC. They lost a close game to Georgia, and they destroyed USC. They still have Stanford and Miami to go, and they luckily don't have a conference championship game. I can definitely see them. So here's my problem is Miami. Do you think Miami's going to beat Notre Dame?
I think so. I think they have a chance. I mean, I know Miami hasn't looked the best, but we're going to get there. Yeah. I don't know. There's something about this Miami team. There's something about those teams that seem to find a way to win when they shouldn't.
Like Auburn a few years ago.
Exactly. They have some of that vibe going on.
Okay.
And I have to admit, like, the law of averages has to correct itself at some point. Mark Richt has to win something and not get cheated out of different things and be 10-2. I refuse to believe he'll be 10-2 this year.
He will be 10-2 this year. But Notre Dame, I will say, for the purpose of this discussion, contender, because 1, nationally, Notre Dame is still like overhyped and overrated.
Absolutely.
And 2, I think they're definitely capable of beating both Miami and Stanford, and they don't really have any other tough games the rest of the season. And if they win out at 1 loss, they're going to be in.
Yeah.
They just are.
I'm just with a lot of the people
I'm rooting
in the general
against
public.
them.
I kind of am too. Sorry. We're not really unbiased here. But
we both really don't like Brian Kelly. It's not
really,
the player's fault. It's Brian Kelly's
it's not
fault.
even the university or anything. It's just
No.
we really don't like.
I like
Brian
the university.
Kelly.
I don't like Brian Kelly at all.
Yeah, it's just
At all.
We both think he's kind of a sleazeball and overrated. But
Clemson,
contender.
They're gonna win the ACC and then be in the playoff. I basically at this point I have two lock-ins. It's either Georgia or Bama, whoever wins the SEC championship game, and Clemson. Those are the two lock-ins. Those spots are filled.
Right.
There are two up for grabs. Ohio State, they just beat Penn State. We skipped
a
one.
team.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
a team that's ranked way too high. Yeah,
Oklahoma. They beat Ohio State, but then they lost. Who they lose to?
Iowa State.
Iowa State, who is also in this discussion. So that ends up not looking like such a bad loss, actually. Contender or pretender?
Pretender.
I agree. I don't think that team. I think that team won a fluky game against Penn State and
Ohio State.
Oh my goodness! What am I doing?
It's okay. You had Penn State on the mind.
They won a fluky game against Ohio State. I think Baker Mayfield is overrated, and the team isn't great defensively.
They aren't. It's really Baker Mayfield or bust, honestly. And it's just I just don't have a lot of trust in Baker Mayfield to just take his team to victory.
And they have a relatively tough schedule going ahead. So I'm going to say pretender. I don't think they're going to make it.
Agree.
Ohio State. Here we go.
There we are.
Just won a big game against Penn State. Great comeback led by JT Barrett. It was a great game. Very close game. One that I actually thought Penn State was going to pull out because at the very end of the game, if you watched it, for some reason, Ohio State squib kicked it with like 20 seconds to go, and Penn State ended up getting it around their own 40.
Yeah.
And all they needed was a field goal, so they needed 20 yards for a legit shot at winning the game.
Great call, Urban Meyer.
Mark Richt did this all the time. Why do you squib kick? Just kick it out the back of the end zone. Do what you do the rest of the time. Kick it out of bounds. I don't care.
We don't get paid millions of dollars to coach a team like that, but
makes no sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to me either. But whatever.
Ohio State. I am going to say contender. And I don't like saying it because I don't like Urban Meyer. But the problem is, really, all they have left on the schedule that seems imposing is Michigan, who's been down this year.
Yeah,
and if they beat Michigan, then they will win the tiebreaker against Penn State to go to the Big Ten championship game. Then if they beat Wisconsin, they're going to be in. Like, I see a clear path for them to get in, and it's one that I think is pretty likely. It's really that Wisconsin, I'll go ahead and say it. There's another spot in the playoff. It's going to be either Wisconsin or Ohio State. Penn State, they're going to lose the tiebreaker. I don't see Ohio State.
Unfortunate too, because I think they're better.
Great, yes,
Penn State is better than Ohio State,
and they're
better than Wisconsin.
Penn State has the best player in college football right now, in Saquon Barkley.
Absolutely,
who will win the Heisman handedly. It's going to be a runaway victory for him.
And this is what's sometimes unfortunate about the system, because Penn State's a playoff team. They just had one bad loss, but their resume isn't going to look as good as Ohio State's. And Ohio State has a clear path to the title.
This is why you need 8 teams in the playoff. I'm going to say that again. So, because of that, I don't want to call Penn State a pretender, because
they're still technically a contender. All it takes is Ohio State to lose again.
And they're a team that, unlike guys like Oklahoma, I think if they get to the playoff, they can compete.
Oh, absolutely.
They are one of the 4 best teams in the country.
Hands down.
If I had to pick the 4 best teams in the country right now, it's Georgia, Bama, Clemson, and Penn State.
Yeah, it's no disagreements here.
Same as it was a few weeks ago. But I think Clemson lost the game because their quarterback got hurt.
And it was in Syracuse, and they just don't play well up there.
But if their quarterback hadn't gotten hurt, they would have won that game.
Yeah.
And they'd be ranked 3rd right now, probably. Okay, let's move on. TCU.
I
Pretender.
Pretender. Okay. I was believing for a while, but now I have to say pretender.
I think they're a tad overrated, and they're going to lose some more games before this season's over. They had a great start to the season. I like
Kenny
to see
Hill
that,
looked good.
I like to see that TCU is getting back to form because they've had a rough couple of years since they lost Doxson and those guys. But I'm glad TCU is getting back to form. Gary Patterson's coaching them up, but I don't think they have what it takes this year. Wisconsin.
I'm going to have to say I don't think they're one of the best 4 teams in the country, but they're a contender.
They have to be because they really don't have any, unless I'm missing something with their schedule, I don't think they have any more grueling games in the regular season.
It's just the Big Ten title game.
It's going to be the title game. And if they can pull that game out, they're in the playoff.
Which, I mean, Wisconsin seems to step up in big games just because of the style of football they play. They always just kind of show up and make it competitive.
Other than the year where Cardale Jones beat them 59-0 in his first
Other than
start.
that, yes. But usually...
in his first career
I think that was like 2 coaches ago or something.
It's fine.
Anyway, it's fine.
Like 4
Wisconsin,
years ago.
they have the same kind of identity. They're fine.
All right.
We know what they are.
Miami. The Mark Richt-led Miami, Florida. The U is back.
The U!
Except they're a pretender.
Contender.
Okay, please
I believe.
state your case. State your case.
If they win out and they get
How are
past...
they going to beat Clemson?
You know what? There's sometimes things on paper don't look likely, okay? But sometimes you win the big game, even when you're not supposed to.
So, as a longtime fan of Mark Richt football...
Yes. I think you're bringing some of that Georgia sorrow into this conversation.
As a man who admires Mark Richt more than possibly anyone else in sports, I love that man.
You do love that man.
That is one of the best dudes ever. Miami will lose to either Notre Dame or Clemson, and it will be a bad loss. They will get destroyed, blown out. Honestly, I'll say they'll lose to both because that's
okay.
Because that way they go 10-2. Like,
wow, come on, root for your guy. He's your guy.
I will root for Miami. I would love to see Miami get to the playoff over Clemson, just because not that I don't like Clemson, but I love Mark Richt and I love the swag that the U has right now with their turnover chain.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, and never something I'd thought I'd ever see Mark Richt allow, because that thing is gaudy, but it is sweet, and I love it.
You have to be Miami if you're going to be at Miami.
You know they have that thing locked up, like...
So nobody steals it?
So Marty Smith of ESPN, the Marty Party, he goes to, like, college campuses, and, like, he went to Bama. Right now he's at Miami, and it was his mission while he was there to find the turnover chain and wear it, and he couldn't. Like, this is a guy that got more access to Cristiano Ronaldo than has ever happened before. He got all the access he could ever want at Bama. He couldn't get the turnover chain. That thing is locked up.
Hey, Mark Richt isn't messing around.
Nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows who's holding it. Literally nobody, other than maybe Mark Richt and the guy who's holding it. Like, it's hilarious.
It's up in somebody's dorm right now or something.
So, Miami, I would love to see. Personally, my ideal Final Four would be just teams I'm rooting for. Not even as a fan, because I don't think these would... Like, if Miami gets to the Final Four, they're going to get blown out.
Yeah.
But as a fan, I would love to see it be Georgia, Bama, Miami, Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Those are like my 4 favorite teams of the teams that are left. But anyway, I'm going to have to say pretender because I know Mark Richt football. Speaking of Oklahoma,
disagree with that?
Oklahoma State, by the time this episode goes up, they will have either
the Bedlam rivalry
or lost to Oklahoma. If they win, they're a contender. If they lose, they're a pretender.
I'm predicting them to beat Oklahoma today, so that's why I'm calling them a contender. And also why I called Oklahoma a pretender, because this is just my prediction for the game. I think Oklahoma State's going to get it done, personally. So
I agree, but we'll both look like fools when this episode goes up if they lost. So,
and it's Oklahoma's winning 59-0. Okay, we look like fools. But contender for me. I had them going in at the beginning of the year. I thought they were going to be a really good team. They had a tough loss, but hey, I think they're a contender. All I have to do is beat Oklahoma.
All right. Washington.
Pretender.
I agree. And it's not that I don't think Washington's a good team. I think the Pac-12 came
it's just
in
down this
well,
year.
It came into the season looking like it was going to be one of the best conferences with Washington State. USC was supposed to be great. Oregon was supposed to be on the come up.
Stanford
UCLA
is always good. Was supposed to be good.
And it turns out that
They're
USC's not very good. Oregon's not very good. Stanford is okay, but it's not back to the elite level. Washington State is good, but not great. I think unless they have a lot of help at the top, they're just going to get left out. They're 7-1. They could win the conference handedly, and get left out because not even that it's their fault, but because I think this year they're perceived as lesser. And that's part of the problem with these rankings. And it's why in every non-conference game, even if it's the University of Florida, which is my most hated rival in all of college football, I root for them in non-conference games because a strong conference makes your team look better in situations like this. As Alabama, what's Alabama's, other than Florida State, because that game's just not going to be looked on as favorably now, even though it's not their fault. Right. What is their marquee win this season, other than Florida State? Mississippi State?
Probably Mississippi State, because Tennessee's not good this year.
And who has Mississippi State played this year? Who have they beaten?
Beat LSU, right?
Right. Another SEC team. That's my point. They have Mississippi State at 16. So right now, Bama looks good. They have a top 20 win. They looks good. But the only reason Mississippi State is ranked 16 is because the SEC is perceived to have really good teams in it, even though they haven't beaten anyone out the conference. Do you see my point?
Right. It's because
Washington can beat Washington State. They can beat USC. They can beat UCLA.
I mean, but their biggest win is Rutgers.
And if those teams are perceived, even if it's not true, if they're perceived as lesser, then those wins seem less impressive. That's
how it is.
It's unfortunate because there's not enough interleague play. You have games like Georgia Notre Dame, which Georgia won, by the way. Let's make sure we all keep that in mind. Thank you very much. In Jake Fromm's first start,
the GOAT.
Let's make sure we all keep that in mind when we're considering a one-loss Georgia who loses to Bama in the SEC championship game versus a one-loss Notre Dame. Let's remember who won the head-to-head. Just saying.
Keep hoping. Anyway, so I understand that, but I mean, almost there's not really a lot of incentive to play tough out of conference games. I mean, look at Florida State.
If you're in a premier conference.
I mean, look at Florida State. The game against Alabama ended their season. It's done.
Well, their season ended because their quarterback got hurt and then everyone else got hurt.
Yeah.
That's the reason. If they had lost to Bama in what was a competitive game.
It was.
And then won out, I could have seen them getting to the playoff. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just, with everything that went on in that game, they just didn't have anything left.
Okay. Let's move on. Vautech.
I say contender if they, get to the title game, beat Clemson.
I mean, I say pretender because they're not going to beat Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
And honestly, we were talking about Mark Richt games. It's Miami Vautech tonight.
Those are two coaches I like.
Mark my words. Miami will lose this game. I've watched enough Mark Richt football.
But then that means they'd have 3 losses.
Who else are they going to lose to?
You said they're going to lose to...
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You know what? All right, I revise. They're going to lose to Vautech to get a loss. They're going to beat Notre Dame and revitalize hope. Miami's going to be like, we can do this. We can do this. But it turns out Notre Dame was super overrated, and then they're going to lose to Clemson badly. That's the ultimate Mark Richt experience.
You know what? You're right. You're right.
I've lived this narrative before.
It's a different Mark Richt down in South Florida, though.
He has a goatee now.
It's tanning. It's palm trees. It's the beach. He's back home.
Alma mater.
It's the alma mater, which is still very weird to me that he went there. Still so strange that he's a South Florida guy. Don't know why. Just doesn't seem like it fits.
What you perceive as Miami culture doesn't really vibe with
Mark Richt.
You perceive as Mark Richt culture. But hey, maybe with the turnover chain, he's loosening up a little bit.
Maybe,
All right. Auburn.
Oh, gosh. I don't want to comment.
How many SEC losses do they have? I see they have two losses.
They lost to LSU.
And who else did they lose to?
I honestly don't remember right now.
All right, stall. I'm looking it up.
So, we're talking about
baseball.
So we're talking about some off-season moves here. So anyway, we have, is Stanton going to get traded? Giancarlo Stanton.
I'm here.
Okay.
They lost to Clemson. That's a good loss.
Oh, yeah, that's a good loss.
14-6. That's a good loss. So, because of that, they're a contender.
They're a contender.
All they have to do is beat Bama, and as we discussed before...
It's at Auburn,
Well, actually... So, if they want in, they have to go through Georgia, who they play next weekend, and Bama.
If they beat both of them,
they have to be.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's why I didn't want to comment, because they're still a contender, and also they scare me. So.
And both of those games are rivalry games, and as we discussed last week,
and I don't know if they play Georgia at home or on the road, but I know the Iron Bowl is at Auburn. So they have both those games at home.
They have both the games at home.
And if you remember, last time they had both those games at home.
No, Auburn's gonna win it all, aren't they?
Some crap happened. Some bogus crap happened.
No. Mark Richt is gone. Georgia will win against Auburn.
It's both Alabama boys. It's Kirby and Saban. It's a different squad.
If Mark Richt was coaching, Georgia would lose today against South Carolina. Now I'm going to be real sad if they actually lose and this goes up tomorrow. I'll be so sad.
You will get excommunicated from the Georgia
fandom. If Will
fandom.
Muschamp knocks Georgia out of championship hopes, I'll be so sad. Okay.
Will Mustool.
Let's keep going. Last one, Iowa State.
Contender.
Pretender.
They have 2 top 10 wins. I have to say contender.
Who else did they beat?
TCU and Oklahoma. So, I mean, they were both in the top 10 when they beat them. So I have to say contender.
All right. I'm cool with that. Contender.
You cool with it? Okay.
Contender.
I mean, you never know what can happen in the Big 12, but that's 2 impressive wins on their resume, and it's both 2 conference games. So, contender.
I would agree with that. All right. Well, that does it. It sounds like our Final Four will include either... Let's just do it. What do you actually think the Final Four will be?
Ugh.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Clemson is a definite.
Okay.
I think Ohio State at this point is a definite.
Yep, whether we want it or not, they're a definite.
You know what? I'm going to do it. I say Bama and Georgia.
They're going to make it?
In the SEC championship game. The game is super, super close and competitive. Doesn't matter who wins. Well, I mean, it does probably because the winner will get the number 1 seed, but Notre Dame loses to Miami. They're out. They're no longer... 2-loss Notre Dame team would not get in over a 1-loss Georgia team when Georgia has the head-to-head. The only other roadblock then would be Oklahoma State. But I think a 1-loss Georgia team or Bama team in a really, really tight SEC championship game would get in over a 1-loss Oklahoma State team. So
I agree.
Because of that, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say Georgia and Bama both get in. And for our sake, selfishly, I would love to see them play in opposite games in the first round.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
then the national championship game
is Georgia, Alabama.
Bama and Georgia. That would be incredible down here.
Is the title game in Atlanta this year too? I know the SEC title game is, but is the national championship game in Atlanta too?
Hang on.
I think it might be. So, I mean, really, what are the Marlins going to get for Giancarlo Stanton? I mean, the contract is massive. It's $100 million more than Matt Stafford's record-breaking contract. That just goes to show you how profitable baseball is. I mean, he's still owed $295 million. Are the Cardinals going to take it? Are the Red Sox going to take it? Are the Dodgers going to be in? Or the Giants? We don't know. What is Jeter and crew going to ask for? We're really not sure because they don't seem to want to eat any money. So are they going to get any prospects in return? Because that contract is an albatross.
You could stop now.
Okay.
Yes, it is in Atlanta.
That would be sick.
That would be the best possible venue for a Georgia-Bama national championship. And it's not unprecedented. If you remember, a few years ago, LSU and Bama played in the national championship game.
In New Orleans.
So that's what I'm going to say. What is your Final Four?
My Final Four, Clemson. It's
Agreed.
also not in this order. Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State.
So we have the same.
Yeah, we do. It's honestly, I don't agree that all these teams are the top 4 teams in the country because I think Penn State is better than Ohio State, but they lost to them.
And unfortunately, you can't just pick which 4 teams you think are the best.
Like that's why I had to separate my head from my heart a little bit because I mean, if I expect now, I mean, this could definitely change. I expect Georgia and Alabama to both be undefeated going into the SEC title game.
And then you have to also expect it to be a good game. Because if it's a blowout, the loser's not getting in.
Exactly.
Like, and that's fair to me. Like, you clearly can't hang with the playoff team. You shouldn't be in. Let's see some new matchups.
Right.
But if it's a game that people would be interested to see again, if it goes like to overtime or it's a 1-score game and it's a really, really good game,
I can't, unless you're just a super SEC basher, like shout out to Danny Cannell. You're a great person, like you as a guy and all that stuff. Really nice dude. But you're an SEC hater among haters among haters. Unless you're a guy like that, I don't think you're going to have any real disagreements with Georgia and Bama getting in if it's a super close game.
Especially if Bama wins. Now, if Georgia wins,
it seems different.
Bama doesn't have an impressive non-conference win this season. It was supposed to be Florida State, and
but
at the time,
thanks Jimbo for having such great depth.
Florida State's 2-5 right now.
Yeah,
that win looks meaningless at this point, even though we both know it wasn't at the time. At the end of the season, people are going to forget. They're just going to see...
At the end of the season, all those people who predicted Florida State to be in the playoff are going to forget that Florida State was a good team.
Yes. So I honestly think for there to be a chance, unless there's a ton of turmoil at the top, which we've seen happen before.
Absolutely.
That can easily happen. Oklahoma State can knock off Oklahoma, then someone can knock off Oklahoma State, someone knocks off TCU, someone knocks off Ohio
Wisconsin
State,
finishes undefeated, beats Ohio State, things like that. Just different stuff can happen.
If everyone is going to be in contention like we think they are, it's going to be tough for a Bama team to get in that doesn't have a marquee win if they lose to Georgia.
Right. I'm with you.
So as much as I would love them both to be in, I'm going to be rooting for Georgia in the SEC championship game.
So you're rooting for Alabama to win the SEC championship game?
No. Okay.
So we can have the matchup we really want to see.
Absolutely not. There's no way I would ever root against Georgia.
I'm bringing the football.
I hate you. Way to go. Super, super inside joke that no one is going to get. But if you're somehow still listening to us, thank you so much for listening.
Tyler Johnson would get it.
Thank you. Tyler Johnson, I don't think listens to this show.
Probably not.
That's the guy who made our intro song, by the way.
And also a player for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And for the Miami Heat. So any of the three, just find one of them and you can get a fire song. That's the guy.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find us at The Rollout Show on Twitter. You can find us at therolloutsports.com. We have some articles up. We have the podcast. You can find it all there. All of our socials are linked to our website, so it makes it easier for you to find them. If you've somehow stuck around with us this long, we hope you enjoyed.
We hope you enjoyed it. And one closing thing I have to say, shout out to all you Gator fans. I have this to tell you. MIZZOU. You'll understand.
Thank you for spelling Mizzou.
That's our chant, man.
Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye. I can't find the stop button.